They say patience is a virtue. I say it's a weapon. On Wall Street, men move faster than thought itself. They chase every flicker of price like moths to flame, desperate for action, terrified of silence. I know because I was one of them. I made fortunes trying to force the market to move before it was ready, and I lost them just as fast. If there's one thing life and markets have taught me, it's this: you can't hurry the tape. I remember my first days in the bucket shops of Boston. The smell of chalk dust, the snap of the tape machine, the shouts of men watching numbers dance across the board. A world that pulsed like a beating heart. Back then, I believed success belonged to the man who acted first. I thought quickness was intelligence, that hesitation meant weakness. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The market doesn't reward movement. It rewards timing, and timing is born of patience. Most people come to the market to make money. Few come to understand themselves. But the market forces that understanding on you, whether you want it or not. It strips away every illusion, every excuse, every lie you tell yourself. It peels back the layers until all that's left is your discipline, or the absence of it. I learned that the hard way. It was 1901. I was young, hungry, and convinced I'd cracked the code. Cotton futures. The setup looked perfect. Every signal pointed up. The newspapers were bullish. The crowd was shouting buy, and I could feel that familiar fever in my blood. The sensation every trader knows, that electric certainty that you're right. So I jumped in. Full position. No hesitation. 2 days later, the price turned. Not violently, not dramatically, just a quiet, almost polite reversal. A whisper where I expected a shout. And I did what every fool does. I told myself I was right and the market was wrong. The market doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't care about your analysis or your confidence. It simply educates. Within a week, it had taught me a lesson that cost me half my account and all of my pride. I sat in my office that Friday evening, staring at my ledger, and realized something that would change everything. The market doesn't punish mistakes. It punishes impatience. Patience isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing only one thing: waiting for the right moment. The young traders can't understand that. They think waiting is weakness. They need to be in a trade, need to feel alive. The ticker moves, their heart races, their hands itch. They can't stand being flat.
Being out of the market feels like missing the party, like watching life happen to someone else. But I learned, often painfully, that the best position you'll ever have is sometimes no position at all. There's a power in emptiness that most men never discover. When you're flat, you're free, free from fear, free from hope, free from the emotional prison that every open position creates. You can see clearly. You can think without bias. The man in a trade is like a soldier in battle. Survival becomes the only thought. But the man on the sidelines, he can see the whole war. I once watched the market for 3 months straight without placing a single trade. 3 months. My brokers thought I'd lost my nerve. My friends joked that I'd retired. But I was doing the hardest work of my life. I was waiting. And when the moment came, I knew it. Not because of some magical indicator or secret formula. I knew it because I'd been patient enough to let the market show me. That single trade made me more money than most men see in a lifetime. There's an old saying I've repeated 1,000 times. It was never my thinking that made big money for me. It was my sitting. People quote it at cocktail parties. They print it on trading room walls. But few understand what it really means. They think sitting means laziness, passivity, doing nothing while opportunity passes by. They couldn't be more wrong. Sitting means readiness. It means having your capital available, your mind clear, and your emotions calm when the real opportunity appears. Because real opportunities, the ones that change your life, they don't come often. Maybe 3, 4 times a year if you're lucky. Maybe once in a decade for the truly life-changing ones. Every man in this business pays tuition. Some pay with dollars, others with years of their life. The impatient pay with both. When I was younger, I used to jump into trades like a soldier rushing enemy lines, convinced I could outfight the market with sheer courage and determination. But courage without patience isn't bravery, it's suicide. The market is a battlefield of emotions, fear, greed, pride, envy, and doubt. And the man who can sit still amid that storm isn't weak, he's dangerous. Because the crowd's greatest weakness has always been, and will always be, its restlessness.
One spring, I watched an older trader, quiet, gray-haired, calm as a lake at dawn. He'd sit in his small office for hours, barely moving, just watching, just thinking. The younger traders mocked him behind his back. "Doesn't he trade anymore?" they'd whisper. "Maybe he's lost his touch. Maybe he's scared." But every few months, he'd make one move, just one, a single, decisive entry. And that one move would make him more money than the rest of us made in a year combined. I finally asked him once, over coffee, how he knew when to act, how he could sit there day after day, watching opportunity after opportunity pass him by. He looked at me with eyes that had seen 100 market cycles and smiled. "Son," he said, "I don't predict anything. I wait until the market tells me. And the market always tells you, but it never shouts. It whispers. And if you can't sit still long enough to hear that whisper, you'll mistake noise for truth your whole life." That sentence changed everything for me. Because the market does tell you, but only if you're patient enough to listen. Only if you can resist the siren song of constant action. Only if you can sit in the discomfort of stillness while everyone around you is moving. Patience isn't passive, it's the most active thing you can do. Because you're actively resisting your ego, your fear, your need to feel important. You're fighting the hardest battle there is, the battle against yourself. There's something about stillness that most men can't handle. Silence feels like loss. Inaction feels like failure. We're taught from childhood that doing something, anything, is better than doing nothing. But markets don't operate on human anxiety. They move in rhythms, ancient and indifferent. There's a time to advance and a time to be still, a time to risk and a time to protect. I learned to breathe with the market. When it was restless, I was calm. When it was loud, I was quiet. When everyone was buying, I was watching. And when everyone was watching, I was buying. That's when I began to notice the real opportunities, not in the explosions everyone sees, but in the pauses between them, the quiet accumulation before the breakout, the exhausted selling before the bottom, the moments of stillness that precede every major move. Every big trade I ever caught started the same way, with waiting. Not with genius, not with some secret indicator, just with the discipline to do nothing until the moment revealed itself.
The impatient call waiting boring. The experienced call it strategy. Most people lose in markets not because they lack intelligence, not because they don't work hard, not because they can't learn technical analysis or read financial statements. They lose because they can't handle boredom. They confuse stillness with stagnation. They think that if they're not actively doing something, they're falling behind. But boredom is the forge where discipline is built. It's the fire that burns away everything weak in you. The market is a living thing. It breathes, it sleeps, it tricks you. It gives just enough false movement to test your resolve, just enough small wins to make you overconfident, just enough small losses to make you doubt yourself. And every time you flinch, every time you act out of impatience rather than conviction, it takes a piece of your capital as payment. I've lost millions that way, millions. And I've made millions by doing the exact opposite, by doing nothing. It's not glamorous. It won't make you feel like a genius at dinner parties. But it's the truth that separates the survivors from the casualties. The best trade you'll ever make is often the one you don't take. I remember once in 1915, I sat watching a railroad stock for 6 weeks straight. 6 weeks of nothing but sideways movement, grinding, boring, meaningless price action. The newspapers said it was dead money. The analysts called it overvalued. My friends asked why I was wasting my time. But I'd seen something they hadn't. Quiet accumulation. Invisible to the untrained eye, but clear as daylight on the tape. Someone, some group with deep pockets, was slowly, patiently building a position. So I waited. Every morning, I'd come in early. I'd watch the tape, take notes, and wait. No trades, no movement, just observation. Day after day after day. My brokers thought I'd gone soft. Maybe I had by their standards. But I'd learned something they never would. Waiting doesn't cost time. It earns it. Then one Tuesday morning in April, the rhythm changed. Volume spiked without any news. Price held at levels that should have broken. And I felt it, that shift in the tape's heartbeat that tells you everything is about to change. By noon, it broke out like a gunshot, sharp, violent, unstoppable.
I was already in, had been for 20 minutes, and I held that position for 3 months. That single trade, the one I waited 6 weeks to take, paid for half a year of patience. Paid for my apartment, my expenses, and then some. The lesson? Time invested in waiting isn't time wasted. It's time compounding. People think trading is about predicting price movements. It's not. Trading is about managing emotion, about controlling the voice in your head that screams at you to act, about resisting the gravitational pull of the crowd's fear and greed. You can know every indicator, every chart pattern, every earnings report, and still lose everything if you can't control yourself, because knowledge without discipline is just expensive entertainment. When you wait, you're not wasting time. You're collecting clarity. You're letting the noise settle so you can see the signal. The crowd reacts to fear. The amateur reacts to excitement. The professional responds only to confirmation. Every losing trade I've ever made started with the same thought. I can't wait any longer. I'll miss it. Every winning trade began with, I'll act when the market confirms what I'm seeing. That's the only real difference between profit and loss, between staying in the game and washing out. Patience. There's a moment in every trader's life, if he's fortunate and humble enough to reach it, when he realizes the market isn't his opponent. It's his teacher. The greatest teacher you'll ever have, in fact. Ruthless, yes. Unforgiving, absolutely. But fair in a way that nothing else in life ever is. The market doesn't care about your background, your education, your connections. It doesn't care if you're having a bad day or if your bills are due. It tests you in silence, tempts you with movement, and rewards you only after you've proved you can resist both. Most men never pass that test. They want shortcuts. They crave excitement. They need to feel like traders
instead of thinking like one. But the man who can wait, really wait, not with resentment, but with purpose, becomes something else entirely. He becomes dangerous. Because he doesn't need to win every trade. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He only needs to wait for the right trade. And when it comes, he moves with the full force of his capital and conviction.
That's when patience transforms from a defensive tool into an offensive weapon. There's a period of my life I don't often discuss. It was 1907, after my first great fortune and my first devastating ruin. I'd made millions in my 20s. The newspapers called me the boy wonder of Wall Street. I was brilliant, they said, fearless, unnatural. And I believed them. That belief cost me everything. I'd gotten so good at making money quickly that I forgot the fundamentals. I started forcing trades, trusting my instincts over the tape, acting on hunches instead of confirmation. Pride had replaced patience. Confidence had become arrogance. And the market, as it always does, humbled me, crushed me, took everything I'd built and scattered it like ashes in the wind. I spent the next 18 months rebuilding, not my account, but my mind. I'd sit in my small office for hours, the ticker silent, my pencil still. No trades, no action. Just thinking, reviewing, understanding where I'd gone wrong. My old brokers thought I'd lost my nerve. My friends thought I'd retired in shame. But I wasn't broken. I was learning again. Learning how to wait, how to listen, how to respect the market instead of trying to conquer it. During those months, I discovered something profound. Waiting isn't passive. It's preparation. When you wait, you're not just sitting there, you're studying, observing, building a database of patterns in your mind. You're training yourself to recognize the difference between a real opportunity and a tempting mirage. That's when I realized the deepest truth of this business. The market doesn't test your analysis. It tests your character. The market will tempt you in 3 ways, over and over, until you either master them or they destroy you. First, it will tempt you to act before you should, to jump into a move early, convinced you'll get a better price. This kills more traders than anything else. They see the beginning of a trend and can't resist getting in immediately, before the market has confirmed anything. They're not trading, they're gambling on their ability to predict. I learned to wait for confirmation, even if it meant paying a slightly higher price, because a confirmed trade at a worse price is infinitely better than an unconfirmed trade at a perfect price.
Second, it will shake your confidence when you should hold. After you've entered a good trade, a trade with confirmation, with proper position size, with a clear plan, the market will test you. It will dip just enough to make you question everything. It will make you want to exit early, to protect your small profit, to avoid the pain of watching it disappear. This is where most traders die. They have the courage to enter, but not the conviction to hold. They cut their winners short and let their losers run, doing the exact opposite of what makes money. Third, it will reward your worst habits just long enough to reinforce them. You'll make an impulsive trade and it'll work. You'll break your rules and profit, and your brain will learn the wrong lesson. It'll think, see, I don't need discipline, I can trust my gut. But those occasional wins are just the market's way of keeping you addicted to bad behavior. Like a casino giving you just enough small wins to keep you at the table while it slowly drains your bankroll. The only way to break these cycles is through patience. Patience to wait for proper setups. Patience to hold through the uncomfortable moments. Patience to stick to your rules even when breaking them might work out. I used to think making money was the goal. Now I know it was just the bait. The real goal, the only goal that matters, is mastery. Mastery of time, mastery of emotion, mastery of self. Because the man who controls his patience controls his destiny. And in this game, that's the only thing you truly can control. You can't control when the market will move. You can't control whether other traders will be rational or insane. You can't control interest rates, earnings reports, or breaking news, but you can control when you act. And that control, that one simple thing, is the difference between the 95% who lose and the 5% who win. Let me tell you when I truly understood this. It was 1924. I'd rebuilt my fortune slowly and carefully. I'd learned my lessons. I was disciplined, patient, methodical. And then I saw an opportunity in wheat. Everything aligned. Seasonal patterns, global supply, accumulation on the tape, everything. But there was no urgency, no desperation. I didn't need this trade to prove anything. I didn't need it to pay bills or impress anyone. I waited for 3 weeks after I first saw the setup, just watching, confirming, making sure this wasn't my ego talking, but the market itself.
When I finally entered, I knew, not hoped, knew. And I held that position for 4 months while it multiplied my capital. That's when it clicked. Money wasn't the reward for patience. Money was just the evidence of mastery. The real reward was the calm I felt, the clarity, the absence of fear and greed. I'd become a different kind of trader, one who didn't need constant action to feel alive. Most traders are seduced by volatility, by big moves and dramatic headlines. They want the excitement of the shout, the explosive breakout, the shocking collapse, the dramatic reversal. But I learned to love the whisper. The whisper happens in the quiet accumulation before anyone notices, in the subtle shift of volume when nothing seems to be happening, in the way price holds its certain levels day after day, boring everyone into looking elsewhere. The whisper is the market telling its secrets to anyone patient enough to listen. I remember watching U.S. Steel in 1927. For 2 months, it traded in a tight range. Newspapers said it was dead money. Analysts recommended avoiding it. But on the tape, I saw something different. Every dip was met with buying. Every rally was met with more buying. Someone, big money, institutional money, was absorbing every share available without pushing the price up. That's accumulation, and accumulation always precedes distribution. Always. So I waited until the accumulation was complete, until I saw the first signs that the big money was ready to mark up their position. Then I bought. And I held through the 40% gain that followed over the next 6 months. That trade taught me the shout gets attention, the whisper gets paid. People think patience is free, that waiting costs nothing. They're wrong. Patience costs ego. It costs the feeling of being smart, being active, being important. It costs you the stories you tell at parties about your latest brilliant trade. It costs you the daily excitement of watching your positions move. But what you get in return is worth infinitely more. You get clarity. You get capital preservation. You get the ability to be fully present when the real opportunities appear. You get freedom from the emotional roller coaster that destroys most traders.
I've sat through entire market cycles without trading. Weeks, sometimes months. And during those periods, I've been called washed up, scared, over the hill. But then I'd make one move, one patient, well-timed entry. And I'd make more in that single trade than all the critics made in a year of frantic activity. Because while they were burning energy on noise, I was conserving mine for signal. Patience isn't about inaction. It's about conservation of force. After 5 decades in this business,
after fortunes made and lost, after every lesson the market could teach me, I've learned one final truth. Most traders lose to the market. The few who win are winning against themselves. The market isn't trying to beat you. It's indifferent to your existence. It's just moving, breathing, living its own life. The battle is internal. It's between the you who wants to act and the you who knows you should wait. Between the you who craves certainty and the you who can live with ambiguity. Between the you who needs to feel smart and the you who just needs to be profitable. Win that internal battle, and the external results take care of themselves. Every empire starts with patience. Every fortune begins with restraint. Every great move in the market starts with someone who was willing to do nothing while everyone else did everything. That someone can be you, but only if you learn the rule, the one rule that matters more than all others combined. Wait for the market to confirm what you're seeing. Then, and only then, act with full conviction. If you've made it this far, through this entire story about waiting, about stillness, about patience, then you're already different from 99% of traders out there. Most would have stopped listening after 2 minutes. They'd call this boring, irrelevant. They'd go back to searching for the next hot tip, the next quick setup, the next shortcut to riches. But you stayed, and that tells me everything I need to know about you. You understand that real success isn't found in the shout. It's found in the whisper. That wealth isn't built on excitement, but on discipline. That the hardest work you'll ever do is the work of doing nothing when nothing should be done. There are more lessons to come. Lessons about capital, about risk, about the psychological warfare the market wages on your mind. Lessons about the patterns that repeat across decades and the mistakes that every generation makes again. But they all rest on this foundation, the rule of waiting.
Master this, and everything else becomes possible. Skip it, and nothing else will save you. So let me ask you something. What's the hardest thing you've ever waited for? What's the one time patience paid off in a way you couldn't have imagined? Share it in the comments, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally understand this lesson. And if this message resonated with you, if you felt that recognition of your own impatience in these words, then make sure you're subscribed. Because the next lesson, about how patience transforms into capital, about the power of the first $100,000, that's when everything changes. The market will never stop testing you. It will tempt you to act when you should wait, to doubt when you should hold, to believe you're smarter than time itself. But remember this, it isn't your thinking that makes the big money. It's your sitting. It's your patience. It's your willingness to be bored while everyone else is busy. Sit long enough, and the market will reveal everything. React too soon, and it will take everything back with interest. So the next time your emotions scream, do something. Let your logic whisper, wait. Because that whisper is the sound of profit being born. Subscribe for those who move only when it matters. Comment below, what's the hardest thing you've ever waited for? The rule of waiting, the only rule that truly matters.